It's useless to try and explain it to you. You wouldn't understand. It all seems so absurd.
Hey, you hear them? Maybe we can find out where they really go.
Hello, listeners, and welcome to our first bonus episode. In this episode, we're going to be reviewing the film Suspiria, a 1976 Italian horror film.
77.
I'll correct myself. 1977 according to
IMDb.
Yeah, I got it. So this episode, obviously, as always, we have Dylan with us.
Howdy.
And we have my younger brother Andrew as our special guest.
Hola.
Oh boy.
This might be an interesting experience.
This might be an interesting experience. I apologize in advance. All right, so let's do a little. We just watched this film, Suspiria. We sat down and watched it tonight. So let's get some initial thoughts.
Initial thoughts all around the room. Let's start with Andrew, our special guest.
Andrew, yes.
What do you got?
Well, it was a weird movie, and it wasn't the worst movie I don't think I've ever seen in my life.
Definitely not the worst.
No, definitely not the worst. 100% not very good for me.
Really?
Well made.
Yeah.
Acting is...
Actually, I don't know. Well made is debatable, but...
Yeah.
Direction, pretty good.
Yeah.
The lighting, though weird at times, good.
Yeah.
The acting is where it really tanks for me, and the effects is where it tanks for me. But we'll get into that as we discuss it further.
Yeah, I'll say the same thing. Parts of this movie are good. Parts of them are not. I think pacing was a real struggle. I think, like you said, effects was
Lacking.
lacking. I will say that I think that the director established a mood and an atmosphere and was able to maintain it from beginning to end. And, we'll get into the more gritty details. So, I guess with that...
let's go ahead and start off the review. We're going to go ahead and start with our story aspect.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is going to be our regular grading scale of good, bad, or meh, and then we'll give our overall. So starting with story, Andrew, what do you think about the story? And then go ahead and give your grade for the story.
The story is okay, but it got confusing at times, so I give it about a meh.
That's fair.
Yeah, I'll agree. The plotting is a little slow. I like the film starts out like everything's super dramatic at the beginning of the film. I will say this movie commits a cardinal sin of mine. And it starts off with a voiceover. I hate voiceovers. I'm really glad that the voiceover was only at the very beginning of the film and they dropped it. But
the voiceover in the American version is actually dubbed. The original voiceover for the Italian version when it came out was the director himself.
Really?
Uh-huh.
That's interesting. But I feel like you should never rely on a voiceover to tell a story. You should always be able to show it to us and we get it, or having a character in the film explain it to us through exposition. I just don't like voiceovers. But they dropped it after that first line. And all he says is that the main actress, I believe her character's name is Sarah, was...
Her name's Susie.
Susie, I'm sorry. Susie was accepted to this dance school, and she took a flight there, and that's pretty much all he says. The film it catches you. It's intriguing because at the very beginning of the film, she goes to the school. She sees a girl running out, and then we actually shift our focus away from Susie for a bit when we follow around this other girl who we see run away from the school, actually runs through the woods, and she goes back to I guess it's a friend's apartment or something, where she is sort of inexplicably killed. I'm sure not exactly how the physics of that kill worked, but
I mean, we won't question it.
Yeah, but she gets pulled through a window and then brutally stabbed, and it's
Repeatedly.
It's violent. Her and her roommate both get killed. I don't think the director, maybe he did this on purpose. I don't think he did a great job of keeping things in perspective of the location, like how we go from one location to the other, because she's on this window on the second story as far as I could tell, and then she gets pulled through it, but then all of a sudden she's on the ground level, and then somehow they're back on the roof and she gets dropped through the little what do you call those things, the glass ceiling, whatever you call it. And I don't know, I'm not really sure how they got up and down so fast, but that's really, so anyway, we had this murder at the beginning of the movie, but then the movie really slams on the brakes. She goes to the school, some weird things start happening, and a couple of the girls get murdered. Actually, I think just one of the girls get murdered, right? Yeah, and there's some weird, like I said, some weird stuff happens, and really nothing super
Interesting.
happens until the last 15 minutes of the movie or so, when she goes in and figures out they're all witches, and then has this showdown with like the old founder of this school who's still alive and is like some
That's
super
burnt?
powerful witch. And yeah, well, I don't think she's burnt. I think she's just super old, and she's like invisible, but because of the lightning storm, she sees her outline, and so she stabs her, and
she becomes visible.
the school like
catches on fire.
And she just kind of walks away all casual like. And but I'll say it's intriguing. I'm not gonna say it's great. I'm sure there's a lot of underlying subtext there that I didn't pick up on.
Maybe after we watched it a second time, which I don't know if I could sit through at this moment in time. But
Maybe we have to watch the remake. Maybe they'll have it a little more Americanized and modernized, and I can tell what they're trying to tell me.
Because we hear from America.
We hear from America. But overall, I'm gonna give the story a lower meh.
That's fair.
Because like I said, it was able to keep me intrigued despite the slow pace, but really just not a lot happened.
I can agree with that. There were a lot of elements to this story that were completely and totally convoluted and confusing. While we were watching this movie, we sat there for, which is a very short runtime of a little over an hour and a half. We sat there for probably, I would say, at least a good 45 minutes, completely confused. We weren't confused about the first really 15 minutes of the movie, and we weren't really confused about the last 15 minutes of the movie per se. But that entire time in between, that 45-minute gap in between, we were pretty much totally lost. And there were some really interesting scenes that were just like long and drawn out for absolutely no reason that led to nowhere other than to, I guess, make a fact that was stated earlier, a few minutes earlier in the film, make it seen so people would believe that this was happening. Kind of has like a hex on a dog or whatever, and it causes it to eat its owner.
Yeah, that was
who's a blind man.
Yeah, that was one of the more interesting scenes in the film.
But it was just way overly long for absolutely no reason. The story, honestly, is slightly boring to a degree after the first 15 minutes, and that last 15 minutes it's just slow and nothing really interesting happens. I mean, some stuff kind of goes down. I mean, we get like a scene with some maggots falling on people through their rooms that we come to find out is supposedly food that they ordered, but
I'm pretty sure it was
a body. Yeah, when they open those crates, you can't really tell.
It's really underlit, but yeah.
But I mean, nothing really interesting happens. Then we get those last 15 minutes, and a girl named Sarah comes up to our main character, who she's been associating with the whole movie, and asks her if she knows anything about witches. And then that's kind of how we find out that this movie has to do with a coven of witches, and then it kind of gets a little more convoluted, but also works itself out.
That's one of my problems. Is I feel like really this second act, this movie seems just kind of directionless. Like you don't know where it's going. It takes forever for them to reveal to the audience that this movie's about witches. I mean,
you don't know that until like 20 minutes before the movie's over.
Yeah, I mean, that is a little bit exaggerated, but yeah, maybe about half an hour before the movie ends is when I think they start really talking about witches and stuff. Before that, you really don't know, is this just going to be about some like cruel dance teacher, or like, are these women just going to be psychotic? You really don't know what's going on.
You kind of don't really know. So for the story part, I'm going to go ahead and give it a lower end meh. All right, next up we got acting.
Oh boy.
Let's go ahead and bring it back around to Andrew. What are your thoughts on the acting in this movie, and then go ahead and give it your grade.
The acting is not the best I've ever saw.
What do you think? Like, is there a particular actor or actress that bothered you the most?
Not really.
They're just all
They're all kind of...
Anybody you liked, you thought did a decent job?
Bad at acting. They're kind of all bad at acting.
That's fair. What would you give it as a grade for the acting?
I would give it a low meh.
Low meh?
Low meh.
That's fair. All right, Aaron, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I'll say that I don't think any of the younger people in this film are good. Especially the character of Sarah. She really gets on my nerves. Susie, I mean, at times she's passable. At times it's kind of bad. I will say that I think the teachers, Madame Blanc, played by
Joan Bennett. It's actually her last role.
Yeah, Joan Bennett. She does good. And Alita Volley, as like the dance instructor or whatever, I think she does a decent job. But really, other than that, there's not a lot of great acting going on here. I think I'm actually going to go with Andrew. I think I'm going to give it a lower end med just because I do think Joan Bennett does put on a decent performance and kind of helps alleviate the acting, but it's definitely not good. Nobody.
I am right on board with both of you guys. The acting in this movie, for the most part, is atrocious. Girl who plays Susie, she's got some redeeming moments, but there are other moments where she just kind of falls back and it doesn't quite work. The girl who plays Sarah has some of the worst scenes in the entire movie. The scene where she tries to crawl out this window that's upstairs in this weird room and falls into this other room that's got a bunch of wire, and then just how she acts when she's in there. Oh, it's just so over dramatic and exaggerated, and it is just god awful. But the real standouts in the movie that help bring it back up for me a little bit are going to be Joan Bennett as Madame Blanc. She puts on a good performance as kind of the headmistress of the dance school, and then Alida Valli, who does a really good job as the lead dance instructor. So overall, I'd probably give it, I'm going to go ahead and give it a high bad.
A high bad.
A high bad.
All right. Okay, so I guess that brings us around to our last category, our technical aspect / directing / whatever else we want to talk about. We're still working on the name for that. So, Andrew, is there anything else that stands out to you about this movie, say from like special effects, directing, lighting, anything?
The special effects and the lighting were a little not that good. They have these weird colors that pop up spontaneously everywhere, like red and green, when they don't need to be any.
That's fair.
Yeah, anything else? So,
No.
from like a directing standpoint and a technical standpoint, what would your grade be? A meh? Yeah, I agree with him on the light thing. Like, there's a lot of... And I understand what the director was trying to set a mood and, like, have a visual style here. But there are a lot of green and reds in this movie.
And they just come out of nowhere.
Yeah, there's no, like, practical, real-world reason for those lights to be there. They're just there.
And it never explains how they're there.
Yeah.
They're just there.
They're just there. Which is kind of a neat visual style, I guess. I guess just for me, being a realist. It kind of
I'm wondering where this lighting source is coming from.
Yeah, well, where is this lighting source coming from? I'm going to say that my biggest technical blunder with this movie is the dubbing.
Oh, it is so bad. It is some of the worst dubbing I think I've ever seen in a movie.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I guess... Now, this is just me guessing. I haven't done enough research into this film to know this for sure. Because when you watch the lips of the actors move, I'm pretty sure most of them are speaking English.
It really does look like most of them are speaking English. There are a couple characters that
there's a couple characters that I don't think are. What I assume happened are that these are probably Italian actors and
Some
actresses.
of them,
And they probably had really thick Italian accents. So when they brought this movie over to America... They probably just redubbed the lines, which I get, and I'm glad they did that because I hate to have to try to, decipher what everybody's saying the whole time. But
the man who was in charge of this dubbing did a god-awful job.
Yeah, it's not great. Sometimes the words are not synced up with the mouth, even though they're speaking English words. There's one character in particular that our main character Susie goes to this psychiatric hospital and talks with a couple of psychiatrists, and there's this older man there. I'm gonna assume he was speaking Italian and not English.
He's definitely not speaking English.
No, because the dubbing in this scene is horrible. It is obvious that the words that are coming out of my speakers and the words that are coming out of his mouth are not the same.
Definitely not the same.
And I'm going to say I watch a lot of bad dubbing. Like I've said before, I'm a huge Godzilla fan. Obviously, there's a lot of bad dubbing goes on in those movies. But that doesn't mean I have to like it or not let it bother me. And the dubbing in this film is bad. One other thing I want to talk about, the gore effects in this film. The blood, and again, this might have been a stylistic choice. I'm not sure. The blood in this movie is super fake. It's bright.
1977 too, though. I mean,
It's almost fluorescent red.
It almost looks like they took red paint.
I think they
spilled
did.
it everywhere.
And spilled red paint everywhere. Probably some lead poisoning resulted from this movie. But yeah, I was not a fan of the gore effects. The soundtrack didn't bother me as far as the piece of music did, or I guess you can call it music. It's kind of music mixed with some weird
Sound
sounds.
effects.
Yeah, but it's overbearing. At times, it's a little loud compared to what's going on in the film. I will say, though, as far as the good things go, the direction, I thought overall was pretty good. He did a good job setting up a mood. The director is Dario Argento, I believe is how you say his name. He did a pretty good job, like I said, setting a mood, creating an atmosphere and sticking to it, which is always something I'm going to praise because some films fail at that. He got some good performances out of some of the actresses and actors. Some of them he didn't. I think he only had about a $2 million budget to work with this film, which considering the amount of set pieces and fake blood, no matter how fake it looks, that they had to put into this movie and the lightning effects and everything. I think that he did a decent job given what he had. So overall, I'm going to give the technical aspects a middle of the road meh.
Well, I'm about on the same ground that you are when it comes to the directing and technical aspects. The direction of this movie, I can really appreciate. It's definitely highly stylized, and I believe that he's known for this kind of style. From what I saw and read, just a little bit of, based on some of his other movies, that he's a highly stylized, favoring director. Sometimes not always the best thing, style over substance, but I can really appreciate when someone sticks to his style and keep that consistent throughout the entire film. As Andrew said, there are some lighting choices in the movie that don't make any sense to me. These red and green colors that just pop up out of nowhere don't make any sense, and I'm wondering where that light source is coming from a logistic standpoint, and it just doesn't add up. As well as the effects of, like, say, the blood and stuff, they are god-awful. It is some of the worst fake blood I've ever seen in a movie in my entire life. And I have seen a lot of movies. The dubbing is probably one of the worst aspects of this film. And it almost takes you out of the film at certain points in times because the dubbing is so bad. Within the first few minutes, I remember Aaron and I were sitting here watching this. And we both just look at each other and we're like, is this movie dubbed? Because we were confused by it because we thought this was an American film, and we know that they're speaking English. So we just look at each other and we're like, this is dubbed. And we were extremely confused considering the fact that this is a movie where characters are speaking English, but their mouths aren't matching up. My first thought was maybe they just recorded it on a sound stage and then in post didn't quite match it up correctly. But upon further investigation, we're thinking that this, because it is an Italian-made film, they dubbed over it when they brought it to America. The sound design, not the best. There are some moments in time where it is really bad.
Yeah, especially specifically when the girl's being stabbed at the beginning.
Oh, at the beginning? It's awful.
It makes like a squish. Squish. You can't see me, listeners, but I'm making a stabbing motion. Squish.
That is
It's real bad. The soundtrack, as you said, is also at times extremely loud and overbearing. At one point in time, I told Aaron this. I was like, that soundtrack is really loud. He's like, well, why don't you just turn the TV down? I was like, it's not that the TV's too loud. The soundtrack itself is just, it's loud. The score is just way too loud. One of the worst effects in the entire movie is that bat at the end.
Oh my god, yeah.
We didn't even talk about the bat. Oh, it is so bad. It is one of the most fake props I think I've ever seen in a movie.
I don't know. I watch a lot of bad movies.
That's fair. I try to steer away from watching bad movies.
Yeah, I watch a lot of bad movies. But yeah, it was bad. They literally, I think they just took like a little mouse toy and glued wings to it.
And maybe tied some strings onto it and flapped it around.
Yeah. It was pretty bad. But and then it was brutal too. Like, she killed this poor bat.
She smashed this poor bat. She
I was upset.
throws a towel over it and then takes a stool and
smashes it.
Flattens it.
And I don't know what kind of bat that was supposed to be. That was a big bat.
That sucker was as big around as, I don't even know what. I mean, it was bigger around than a pop can.
Yeah, yes. It was big. It was a big sucker. But yeah. So did you say what your final score was? My
overall score for our directing and technical aspect, I'm gonna go ahead and give it a middle of the road meh, like Aaron.
All right. So
with all of our categories being talked about, we got a final score to give.
Yeah. Let's
Good,
start with Andrew.
Bad, and meh.
starting with Andrew.
Go for
I
it.
give it a solid meh.
A little solid. meh.
Solid meh.
So
What do you
yeah,
got?
I'm gonna give it a probably a middle of the road meh as well. I thought, like I said, I thought that the story was kind of convoluted and a little slow, but I thought it was intriguing. I thought the direction was good. I thought it was creepy. It definitely had a creepy vibe to it, and I thought that the acting was hit and miss, but I liked the vibe they had to it. I like the witch aspect. I didn't really talk much about the ending of the film, but I actually think they pulled it off pretty well. There's one scene, one bit in particular that I thought was really, really pretty gruesome and cool. Was when one of her dead friends that they've stuck pins through her eyes.
Sarah, after she dies,
Yeah,
getting
Sarah.
in that whole metal wire pit where she gave a terrible performance.
Yeah, but they stick pins through her eyes and nails through her wrists, and she comes back to life and like comes after our main character with a knife or something. I thought that was very well. Pulled off, and that really boosted the overall score for me. So yeah, I'm gonna give it a meh.
Give it a meh. I'm about on the same page as you. I'm gonna go ahead and give it a middle of the road solid meh. Aspects of the story are highly intriguing, and from the beginning it really pulls you in, but then the majority of the movie just falls flat for me and really just takes a dive, and it gets super convoluted and confusing. And some of the performances given are just terrible. There are some redeeming aspects though. Like I said, Joan Bennett as Madame Blanc is a high point for me, and the direction, and even as weird as the style is sometimes, the style and overall atmosphere and vibe of the movie is really well made, and I really enjoyed that aspect of the film. So I'll go ahead and give it that meh.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, listeners. I did not even know this movie existed until I read a story here a couple weeks ago about how controversial the new film was. I guess it was picking up some controversy at some of the film festivals or something it was debuting at.
I had never heard of this movie in my life until about 3 or 4 days ago.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I guess it's a cult classic.
It's reached cult status, over the years.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, like I said, I've never heard of it, but I guess I'm just a little.
I guess Joan Bennett was nominated for a supporting actress award, a Saturn Award. In
Do Saturn
70
awards count?
In 70, I mean, an award's an award. As well as I saw earlier, it was nominated for like a kind of like a re-release type award in 2002 after it has achieved cult status. But,
yeah, I saw where I guess some of the fans of the original that have seen the new one were very upset with the new one. I guess it deviates from the original quite a bit, which, I mean, I would have to because it's an hour longer. So they got to add in a bunch of new stuff, which I don't mind. Like I said, I'm excited to see the new interpretation of it. I think, although we talked about the problems this film has, I think there's a lot of potential there for a great movie. There's also a lot of potential there for a very bad movie.
Absolutely.
So,
I think that movie has a lot of potential as far as the directing aspect of it goes. The director of that movie did, from what I've heard, a really good job with Call Me By Your Name. Heard was excellent.
Andrew over here says, "Oh yeah," although he doesn't even know what that movie's about.
Got a lot of buzz at the Oscars,
Yeah.
and during award season.
I wanted to go see it, I just didn't get around to it. So
That's fair. But it's got potential. We got a pretty decent cast coming in for this movie.
yeah,
Chloe Grace Moretz or Motet. I don't even know how you say her name, honestly.
we're to,
She got a French name. It might be Moretz or something like that. It's
I
got an
don't
R
know.
in it.
But yeah, she's in it. Dakota Johnson.
Dakota Johnson's in it,
Despite
despite her claim to fame.
yeah,
She-
I can forgive her for that.
I got some hope for her performance.
we all do stuff we're not proud of for fame.
It looks like it's got a lot of potential, and with that extra hour, I'm thinking they can really go into some greater detail and maybe explain some of those parts that we were really confused about in this film.
Yeah.
Maybe with a little bit more exposition and explaining things to us, we could understand it a little bit better. But at the same time, that 2 hours and 32-minute mark might drag on too long. Some of my negatives about the original are that one scene in particular that just drags on too long, and I'm really hoping that this film won't do that too much.
Yeah, I mean, when I hear 2 hours and 30 minutes, it makes me nervous. I mean, because films, when you start trying to stretch out a film for that long, you're bound to have some really dull stretches there.
I have seen some really long movies that are highly enjoyable, though. I mean,
yeah, I look at
The Shining.
The Shining. I look at, I guess, the epitome of long but great would be the Lord of the Rings trilogy. But then
Especially
again,
those director's cuts.
yeah. Then again, you look at what Peter Jackson did with The Hobbit. He's trying to stretch those out to 2.5 hours.
What, that should have been one movie?
When that should have been one 2-hour movie. We had 3 2.5-hour movies. No.
Wasn't necessary. Another movie I look at that has a great story and is really entertaining throughout for me, but it's also extremely long, is Martin Scorsese's Shutter Island with Leo DiCaprio.
Yeah, I have not watched that film, but
I actually watched it for the first time the other day. It was really, really good.
really, I have to get around to it. But I look at The Last Jedi, not to harp on this movie too much, but
We'll get into that next year.
But yeah, it's almost 2.5 hours long.
It is exactly 2.5. It's 2 hours and 32 minutes.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah. Well, it's 2.5 hours long, and not getting into my personal beats with the movie. That I believe that really hurts the film.
It is the longest Star Wars film to date.
Yeah, I mean, Phantom Menace was a long movie, but that Last Jedi, you really feel it.
Come to a screeching halt at certain points in time.
There's certain parts where that they slam on their brakes in that movie, and I'm just like, let's get it rolling. We don't need this. I think Peter Jackson's King Kong, pretty much every Peter Jackson
3 hours
movie.
and 7 minutes.
Yeah, there are. Well, I think that's one of the better King Kong films. There are long stretches of that movie that don't need to be there. So that's what I'm trying to say is longer does not mean better.
Yeah, we got a little off topic there, but longer, like Aaron said, longer does not always mean better.
Nope.
And I'm really hoping that long runtime doesn't drag it down.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and talk about what we got coming up. Like I said, we got
We got a Hunter Killer review trying to come up this week.
Yeah, that'll be coming out hopefully
Sunday evening.
Hopefully we don't get off schedule. We got some other reviews. I believe we have Bohemian Rhapsody
Coming up the week after that. So next week, we'll do our discussion post. We might try to do a top 5 over maybe music films or music related films.
Yeah.
We will maybe talk about something that has to do with music.
Top 5 musicals.
We might even branch out from movies a little bit. We might do top 5 Queen songs if you're feeling up to it.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Oh, we can do both.
Why not?
I mean, we'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, I like Queen. I'm not gonna say
Not a huge Queen fan, but
I'm not
I
a
mean,
huge
I got
Queen
some.
fan.
I like some Queen sometimes.
So, Andrew, you got any thoughts? What do you think about? Are you excited about Hunter Killer?
It might be a good movie.
this
That's being optimistic.
is why we don't invite Andrew on very often.
It might be alright. It would be enjoyable at least.
What about
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody?
What do you think?
Maybe that is right.
Yeah, it's the one about Queens, how they got started as a band.
Yeah, sort of. I think it's more about Freddie Mercury.
It's actually supposed to be more a biopic about Queen itself, from what I just read recently.
Really than Freddie
Yeah,
Mercury.
they're gonna focus on Freddie a lot,
Yeah,
but it's supposed to be about Queen as a whole.
a Queen.
All right. Well, we'll see. But
Anyway, well, we definitely 100% would like to thank Andrew for joining us. Thanks for coming on, bud.
yeah, he'll probably be on some future episodes.
We'll see him. We'll see him again sometime soon.
Yeah. Hopefully he'll be a little more talkative.
I'll try.
As always, you can find us on all social media platforms at DNA Film Wars, all lowercase, no space.
Yeah.
Um,
Any specific questions, email us at dnafilmwars@gmail.com.
Yeah.
We'll be up on SoundCloud, Spotify, hopefully soon. We're up on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and tell the listeners I have been looking at the financial burden of making a website and everything would be. It doesn't look like it'd be too much. So maybe in the not too distant future, we might have a website up and running. Again, no promises. Don't get too excited, but I'll definitely look into that. Maybe over Thanksgiving break, when I have some free time on my hands, I'll look into that. Maybe we can try to get that up and running. I'm sure Dylan would be happy to lend some of his time.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I think that's about all we have for you today.
As always, thank you for joining us. Like to say again, special thanks to Andrew. Say goodbye.
Goodbye.
I've been Dylan.
I've been Aaron.
We'll see you next time.
Maybe we can find out when we go. Susie, do you know anything about